wanted to welcome you to Talkin' Tunes with Dr. Tony, episode 25. So here we are. This is a long 4th of July weekend, and I hope everybody is enjoying their free time. As you can see, the title of this video is Must Watch. And I hope that you don't think that this is clickbait, because I don't operate like that. I did recently see a clickbait story about how Paul McCartney was criticizing Bruce Springsteen's concerts. And when you click on it, the reason he's criticizing it is because Bruce Springsteen gives the audience such a wonderful experience in terms of the length of the concert. So there's actually not an issue at all, but looking at the headline, one would have thought. But anyway, I want to talk to you today about a tragedy in popular music. And, you know, going back to the 1950s, there's been a number of tragedies. So we have Charlie Parker, the jazz saxophonist, who died at the age of 34 after a life of heavy excess with heroin usage, drinking, and eating. And when he died, the coroner came and didn't know who it was and thought the guy was like in his 50s. And Charlie Parker was only 34. So he died very young. Also, I believe in the 50s, Hank Williams passed away. I think he was either 27 or 28. And if you don't know much about Hank Williams, he was not really that accepted in country music in the beginning, because he was very innovative and on the cutting edge. So he died very young. And then after that, we've had a number of other tragedies. I'm not going to be able to cover all of them, but one of them is the band Big Star, who I'll do a video on someday, who the 3 studio albums are in the Rolling Stone Top 500, but none of them sold because they had tremendous distribution problems. So I look at them as being the greatest band that never was. One of the main songwriters and singers, Chris Bell, he died at age 27, young. So that's a tragedy. And along the same time, we have Badfinger. Badfinger was a great band, and they had some management issues where they weren't getting paid. And as a result, Pete Ham, the main singer, he committed suicide. And then later on, Tom Gibbons, the other singer in the band, he also committed suicide. So that was very, very sad. We know about Buddy Holly. I did my videos on him. So he died, I think when he was 20 or 21 years old. So that was a tragedy. I just watched the Elvis movie last night, and I wasn't a big fan of it. It was just too stylized for my taste. But Elvis died at age 42, and you know, the last many years of his career, he really wasn't that productive. Then we have Jim Morrison, who died at 27 in the 27 age member club. Jim Morrison, though, he deteriorated very quickly from how he was in his early 20s to how he was when he was 27. But today, I want to talk about, I believe, is the greatest tragedy in popular music history. This has to do with my all-time male vocalist, Harry Nilsson. So after I made the video last time, I realized that I gave Harry Nilsson short shrift. I did not give him the level of recognition that he so richly deserves. Someone once said that either people know nothing about Harry Nilsson or they're very familiar with his life and music. I hope that after you watch this video, you'll be inclined to move to the second category, even if you have just a passing interest in his music. So the singer-songwriter Jimmy Webb and record producer Richard Perry both called Harry Nilsson the finest singer on the planet. So I'm in good company with my selection as Nilsson as my favorite male vocalist. The Beatles publicist Derek Taylor heard a Nilsson song in a store and proceeded to buy multiple copies of one of his albums and distributed them to Paul, John, George, and Ringo, who then proceeded to call Nilsson and let him know they were big fans. They actually called Nilsson their favorite group because he was so diversified and had so much going on that he was like a group unto himself. So I want to first share three very outstanding resources about Nilsson, which is the name he used for his professional career. First is a 17-disc box CD set that represents every studio album he recorded and released for RCA, plus many more additional recordings that were never released during Nilsson's lifetime. As I'm going through each of the CDs, I realize that Nilsson stands alone in terms of the variety of his releases. His first three albums on RCA, Pandemonium, Shadow Show, Aerial Ballet, and Harry, from 1967, 1968, and 1969, were fairly conventional for a singer-songwriter. Before I talk about these albums, though, his debut album from 1966, called Spotlight on Nilsson on Tower Records, mostly covers compilation of 4 singles, A and B sides. So there's 10 tracks, 3 written by Nilsson, nothing really memorable. Now, of the 12 songs on Pandemonium Shadow Show, first on RCA, 6 are originals, which are 1941, Sleep Late, My Lady Friend, and Without Her, covered by Blood, Sweat, and Tears. On the first album, these are the standout cuts. Cuddly Toy was covered by the Monkees. And check out You Can't Do That, which is a tribute to the Beatles in a very creative way. There's little or no guitar that I can detect on this album or the next 2, but there's plenty of horns, strings, piano, and drums. So that first album was a fantastic debut on RCA. Nilsson recorded She's Leaving Home 1 week after Sgt. Pepper was released, and it's a great rendition. The next album, Aerial Ballet, includes arguably two of three of Nilsson's most popular songs. One he wrote, which is called One, was covered by Three Dog Night, and the other one, Everybody's Talkin', from Midnight Cowboy, was written by Fred Neil. The first song, Daddy Songs, was originally removed after the first copies of the album were issued because the Monkees recorded a version of the song to be used in their movie Head after paying $35,000 for the rights. It was later added back to the album. All songs, except Everybody's Talkin', are written by Nilsson. Overall, an excellent album. The third album, Harry, continues Nilsson's upward trajectory and finally had an album that charted on the Billboard 200 at 120. It starts out with the Puppy song, and the lyric goes something like this: dreams are nothing more than wishes, which you may know. It's a great, great song. Then the next song is No One Cares About the Railroads Anymore. This could be Paul McCartney or Rudy Valley because it sounds like something from the vaudeville era. Open Your Window was covered by Ella Fitzgerald. Now, half the album are covers. There's also Mother Nature's Son from the White Album by the Beatles, and then there's Simon Smith and the Dancing Bear by Randy Newman, which is a prelude to his next album. Now, the next album that Harry Nilsson, going back to the second album still, has probably my favorite Nilsson song on the Aerial Ballet, and it's, on Harry, and it's I Guess the Lord Must Live in New York City. Now, this was originally written for Midnight Cowboy, but it was bumped for Everybody's Talkin'. There's also Morning Glory Story, which is amazing. So these three albums contain very little, if any, rock and roll. but they reflect why the Beatles called Nilsson their favorite group due to his versatility, excellent songwriting, both the lyrics and music, and voice. His first 3 albums were produced by Rick Gerard, who unfortunately was abruptly fired by Harry. Harry would never make albums that were as eclectic or as excellent as these that showed his strengths as a singer-songwriter. So the 4th album, as I mentioned, is called Nilsson Sings Newman, and that came out in 1970. Now, this was really a departure because Harry sings, but all the songs are written by Randy Newman, and Randy plays piano. On the first song, though, Vine Street, there is an electric guitar, and I find it interesting about this album that he took a breather from his upward trajectory of the 3 albums I just mentioned to make this album. It's a really great album, and as I mentioned, Randy Newman plays piano. In the same year, 1970, Harry released The Point, which was the soundtrack to an animated TV show that he produced, which features the hit song Me and My Arrow, and also includes a great deal of narration. Now, Nilsson did something very unusual in June 1971. He remixed 12 cuts from his first 2 albums. Probably the first person to do this. The first 2 albums were out of print, and to capitalize on the success of Everybody's Talkin', Harry decided to remix the best of his first 2 albums, 4 from his first and 8 from his second. It's worth listening to just for the changes, but they are very similar to the originals. So think about this. So you have a guy who has 3 great singer-songwriter albums on RCA. Then he does a tribute to a favorite artist, Randy Newman. Then a soundtrack for an animated movie. And then a remix of his first 2 albums. So this is unprecedented, folks. No artist had ever done anything like this. But the best is yet to come. Because then you have Nilsson Schmilsson from November 1971. This was his breakout album, rose to number 3 on the Billboard 200, and was a gold record. It was also nominated for a Grammy for the best album, and Nilsson won the best male pop vocal performance for this album. So this record made Nilsson a household name during this time, and it was produced by Richard Perry. Richard Perry's goal was to make an album like the Beatles, and he succeeded. The highlight of this album that you probably know is Without You, originally written and recorded by Badfinger, and also the song Coconut, Put the Lime in the Coconut, and his most rockinest song ever, Jump Into the Fire, which sounds a lot like John Lennon. Now, unfortunately, the tragedy begins, or really accelerates at this time, because Nilsson was doing a lot of heavy drinking and using drugs quite a bit for the past couple preceding years. But this is where the spiral really starts to accelerate. So the next album was Son of Schmilsson. Has some great cuts, and this was also a gold album. The cast of characters on this album included Peter Frampton, George Harrison, Nicky Hopkins, and Ringo Starr. Richard Perry also produced this album, but Nilsson was very uncooperative, unlike how he conducted himself during the Nilsson Schmilsson recording. It has my second favorite Nilsson song, which is called Remember, parenthetically Christmas. It starts out like this, and of course I can't even begin to approach Nilsson's beginning, but it goes like this. Long ago, far away, and then goes on from there. Remember, like that. The vocals are very plaintive, but his voice is starting to show some wear. I would have loved to hear him sing this song back in 1967 1968 when his voice was still in pristine condition. Also on the Son of Schmilsson album is Turn On Your Radio. Mark Cohn has a great cover of that, and the song Spaceman, which is great. But it also has the unfortunate song You're Breaking My Heart, so you probably know the rest of that, about the breakup with his wife. It also has a country song called Joy, where Harry talks the lyrics, and it's a great song. After this, Harry also came up with a completely unexpected effort, which is a little touch of Schmilsson in the night. And it was all covers of standards from the 1940s and the 1950s. He recorded it with the London Symphony Orchestra in 1973, conducted by Gordon Jenkins, who conducted many of Sinatra's orchestrated songs. Nilsson sang all the songs live with the orchestra. His voice was still capable of performing songs like It Had to Be You, As Time Goes By, You Made Me Love You, and What'll I Do. And the story goes that Harry realized that his voice was starting to fail him and that he needed to record this album before it was too late. So after this album, Harry recorded 6 more albums for RCA, which are not that noteworthy because of lower quality songwriting and singing. Listen to the song Many Rivers to Cross by Jimmy Cliff on the Pussycats album, produced by John Lennon in 1974, and you will hear a voiced, ravaged Harry Nilsson. So he finished his career with the RCA in 1980. He finished his career in 1980 with Mercury, with an album called Flash Harry. So as I mentioned, aside from Jim Morrison and Elvis Presley, Harry Nilsson represented the most rapid decline, and it seemed as if it was completely self-imposed. After Nilsson Schmilsson, most folks would have capitalized on its success, but it represented a turning point for the worse for Harry. I want to recommend the second source is a very good biography on Nilsson. And also I want to mention a very great documentary that maybe you've seen. It's still available on streaming. It's called Who is Harry Nilsson and Why is Everybody Talking About Him? I hope you'll take time to listen to Nilsson's albums released from 1967 to 1972. I don't think you'll be disappointed. And if you like beautiful singing and great songwriting, then you'll enjoy these albums. So anyway, I'm glad that I had a chance to amplify my previous video and give Nilsson his due. I really enjoy him quite a bit, as you can tell. So anyway, happy early 4th of July, everyone. And I hope that you will like this video, subscribe, and give me a thumbs up if you thought it was worth your time. I'll talk with you later. Bye-bye.